Hi, my friends, and welcome into this week's episode of Forte Catholic. I'm so glad that you are here. Kathryn Whitaker is back with me, even though she was here last week, because really we just recorded this all as one and split it into two because it was a very long one episode, and now it's a normally length 2 episodes. So today, we're going to talk about a few spiritual experiences I had. One that I had in my car, one that I had at my first ever visit to a monastery up in Ohio, and then also one in a random Catholic mass, and that one actually made me angry. So we run the gamut of spiritual experiences. We also talk about how I thought that Christians were a part of this revolutionary technology, and it turns out that we're just the dumbest. We're just the dumbest group of people. We hope that you enjoy this week's episode. If you do, please hit the like and subscribe button and, find yourself some popcorn, get a drink, and, pour yourself a glass of whiskey and enjoy this fantastic conversation with the old Kathryn Whitaker. Hello there, and welcome to Forte Catholic. I'm Taylor Schroll. That's Kathryn Whitaker. If you listened to last week's episode all the way to the end, which very few of you do, but you know that Kathryn and I are wearing the same thing that we wore last week. Why is that, Kathryn?
Because we chatted so much about Aggie baseball that we're like, well, I guess we'll just keep talking, but we'll make it another episode.
We will. Last week's episode ended 36 seconds ago. So last week we talked about Aggie baseball, and a lot of it was, as we like to say in the speaking world, inside baseball. So I was like, let's make that a little standalone episode. We did connect it to some faith stuff. We connected it to, church leadership. We connected it to loyalty. We connected it to making good decisions. What else did we connect it to, Kathryn?
Reconciliation.
Sort of. Reconciliation.
We talked about
for
the
people
confessional.
Who deserve it.
I'm gonna need to go to the confessional after getting all that off my chest.
Yeah,
yes.
very, very much so. Today, so we let you have the floor for 45 minutes, and now
it's your turn.
I'm going to take the floor and just let you react, because that's what I did. I was the outsider for the Aggie baseball. You're the outsider for my stories, because this is my life. It's now or never. I ain't going to live forever. But I have been living a life over the last few days, a few weeks actually. So I have 3 stories. I have a story about my favorite German word. I have a story about my first ever visit to a monastery. I have a story about how stupid Christians are, including us Catholics. And I have a story about maybe how God miraculously healed me, but I'm not sure I'm happy about it. Sound like a plan?
That's a lot of stories, Taylor.
It is a lot of stories.
You better get started.
Okay, here we go. So, first story. My favorite German word, Uber. You've heard of Uber, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so...
You don't like Uber?
No, I said favorite.
Oh, your favorite word. Okay.
That know what favorite means?
Okay.
Favorite's a Latin word. It means
I'm plugged in. I'm plugged in. No, I got it. Okay.
I know. It's been a long episode today, Kathryn.
It's okay.
We're 2 minutes in. Okay, so because I've mentioned before, money's been tight, so I have been Ubering and DoorDashing this summer to help it make ends meet. And typically it's not a job of passion, right? It's just a job to make money. And I've been doing it for 3-4 weeks now, ever since kind of the school year ended and things slowed down. It's like, okay, I have time now, and I have the desire to make money and no opportunities. So I'm going to make my own opportunities with these 2 apps on my phone, and I do it as stressfully as I can. I have both apps turned on simultaneously, and I wait till I get one that I like, and I accept that one, and then pause the other one. And when let's say I'm delivering to Kathryn Whitaker, and I'm 3 minutes away from your house, I turn on the other app, accept a delivery in that app, and then I pause your app. It's very stressful.
That sounds stressful. That sounds super stressful, Taylor.
But I'm making more money than I would if I was just doing it the lazy way and the way that they desire me to do it, right? So I'm sure there's rules against this, but you can't stop me. So anyway, it's just a job to make money. It's not fun. It's not exhilarating until this last week. And I mostly do DoorDash because I can listen to podcasts and audiobooks. I do that Goodreads year challenge. Yeah. Are you on Goodreads?
Yeah. How many books are you in? I'm doing 50 this year.
Yeah, you're ridiculous.
Hey, I'm at 30. Oh, hold on. While you do that, I'm going to check and see what I am. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I was going to do 30, but then I decided, no, I'm going to challenge myself a little bit.
Kathryn. That's insane. So typically my goal every year, and my goal for the last, 4 or 5 years has been 12 because I'm not an insane person. I do one book a month. You're doing one book a day.
I'm 50 books and I'm 29. I'm actually reading one right now, so I'm almost 30 books. And I still got 6 more months. Overachiever. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
12 is good. You're digesting them. You're like really listening and taking it.
I listen to more podcasts than you do. So most of my hours of listening is podcasts. But
it's worth saying I'm a speed reader, so I read wicked fast.
Speed reader.
Yeah, stop it. Keep going. Anyway.
So I typically I do one a month. Like that's kind of so. A few years ago, I did 12 and 12, and then the previous year I did 12 and 12. Last year I was a little off, did like 7 and 12. Only read 7 books. This year, it's currently July, and I've done like 10 or 11, and most of them have been in the last month while I've been driving.
I was going to say the last 3 weeks.
Yeah,
you've done them all.
When I'm doing DoorDash, I'm not talking to anybody, right? So I catch up on all my podcasts. I am caught up on every podcast, and every time, like 4 podcasts drop in a day, and I'm done by 2:00 with the lunch rush is over for DoorDash, right? When I'm Ubering, I'm maybe talking to people or listening to music. Like when I'm Ubering, I keep like one AirPod in on my left ear, just so like I can hear the driving directions are going off in my ear, but I can still be talking to people without being rude, all this kind of stuff, right? Okay. Or if they're talking on the phone, I can just pop on some music. Okay, fine. Well, a little bit of stress because I'm adding stress to it, making some money. Fine. It is what it is, right? Until the other day. And I am used to one part of this when it comes to Ubering, especially in a college town. There's this place in Texas A&M called Northgate that you probably went and had some brewskis when you were 19. I'm just saying that.
I didn't go to Northgate until I was 21.
You were 18?
Taylor. I was good. I was a good student.
I've driven home some 18-year-olds who were altered. We'll put it that way. So
shall we say?
Shall we say they were altered? So
I'm glad that they were in your car and not behind the wheel. So
exactly. The whole reason Uber exists is to drive around drunk underage teenagers. So, but I mean, honestly, it is to drive around drunk people. So a big part of Ubering is going to Northgate and driving people home because that's a big part of the service, right? Don't get a DUI, DWI. Don't drive. Right. Pay the $10, $20, get home, and people do that, right? So I'm used to having drunk people in my car. Well, the other day, I had a person who was, as you said before the show, very close to the Lord. It was not alcohol that he absorbed into his body. It was the Lord's favorite plant, his least favorite plant we heard about in Mass the other day, that one plant that he planted in the Garden of Eden. This is God's favorite plant. And this guy in my car had consumed a lot of the Lord's grass, right? So
I think I told you the higher the kite, the closer to God.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess
he was incredibly close to the Lord. And I'm not even making a joke at this point because this man got in the car and I could smell how close to the Lord he was. A lot of times we go to confirmations and baptisms, we smell that chrism oil. Same. It was like the same experience,
just
right?
Slightly different smell. Yeah.
I could smell how close he was to God. And immediately, I'm just like, hey, man, how are you? Like, I know what's going on. He knows I know what's going on. Fine, right? We have an 8-minute drive. I'm going. And he's a talker. He wants to talk. So we're talking. And I was like, hey, what's going on tonight? He's like, it's the weekend. I'm just chilling, right? Okay. I'm in from out of town. Oh, where are you from? He said wherever he's from. I can't remember. And then I was like, well, what are you doing here? He's like, well, I got some kids here with a couple different women. I'm like, okay. So he's going from one of their houses to the others. That was my job, to take him from that house to the other house.
Okay.
And
all right.
I said, oh, how many kids? I was like, I have kids too. How many kids do you have? And he immediately said, are you a Christian? And I was like, I thought that was a very, he said, are you a believer? And I was like,
that's a big segue.
Yeah. Which, if you've ever been around people that close to the Lord, often lots of segues. But that was literally what happened. And I did one of those quick takes of like, what? What happened, right? I was tracking. We were having a nice little conversation. I was tracking.
Right.
Do you have any kids? Are you a believer? I said, well, yeah. And he said, well, I have thousands. I'm like, oh, more than you told me a moment ago. I was like, are you Nick Cannon? Like, what's going on here?
Eddie Murphy? Who are you?
Is Eddie Murphy that way too? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, he's got a bunch of kids. Yeah.
Only thing I know about Eddie Murphy is the McDonald's thing. Are you aware of the McDonald's thing?
The McDonald's thing.
Okay,
don't
Google
that. I'll Google it later. Oh, never mind. Okay.
That was a joke for 20% of the audience who have a past. Okay, so so the now I'm distracted by Eddie Murphy. I didn't know that. So
he had thousands of kids. Yeah,
thousands of kids. He's like, well, because we're all brothers and sisters in the body of Christ, therefore I have thousands of kids. People I feel responsible for. I was like, okay, great. And so that part was weird, but then he starts preaching up a storm. We are having a conversation, and then all of a sudden, the conversation, I go from conversation to congregation real fast.
So he took you to church.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's important at this point in the story to say I've been to a black church once, and now I've been twice, and that was the experience I was having in my car. It was that style of preaching, I will say, right? And okay. He said one story. You know how there's certain ways that I read scripture that listeners of the show can't read certain stories in the Bible without seeing them the same because they have my stupid imagery in their head. I have one for you that I'm going to share with you later, and only you.
Wonderful.
Because it's not for public consumption. It's just for you.
It. Oh, wonderful.
I can't ruin. It'd be bad. So I can't ruin it for everybody, but I'll ruin it for you. But I've had multiple people say, you've ruined that song at church for me. You've ruined that scripture. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's awesome. And it's like, whether it's ruined or make you think about a different way, I think I've done both. Okay, great. This man was talking about all these children, and he said, do you know why I feel like this? And this is where it turned into this preaching. He said, do you know the story of Jesus and the disciples? And I was like, well, yes. Can you be a little bit more specific?
Which one? Yeah. I need you to narrow that down.
Yeah. And he's like, well, Jesus is standing with his apostles, and there's people trying to get through. And at first, I think he's talking about the story of who are my brothers and who is my mother, who are my brothers? Because that's essentially the point he had been making. But then he said, no, he's standing with the apostles, and there's people outside. I'm like, oh, it's Mary and his cousins. Okay, fine. He's like, no, the apostles weren't letting the kids come. And then Jesus was like, he saw them kids, and he said, them kids need to come on through. You need to have them kids come through. I'm never going to read that story ever again because of an Uber trip that I was taking at 10 o'clock at night for 8 minutes. This guy changed my life in 8 minutes.
8 minutes. Wow.
That's
about a homily.
Yeah, exactly. There's a Pope Francis length approved homily. Very
that's right.
Good.
Yes. But to the point.
Jesus told those kids to come through. And that's how I just imagine Jesus inviting me into his presence every day now. Because this man has changed my life. The kids just need to come through. It was beautiful. Beautiful.
I guess you can find Jesus anywhere, Taylor.
You really can. In my Toyota Prius with a large man close to Jesus in the backseat. Very, very good.
I
dropped him off. He asked me where I went to church. I said St. Joseph's Catholic Church. He said, okay, and got out of the car. So
and we're done. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, either way, this is ending the conversation.
Did he give you a 5-star rating? That's the most important part.
I don't think he knew what a phone was.
Okay. Fair. Okay.
So that was one of my, that was one of my 3 very close moments to the Lord. That was probably the silliest. I have one. The next one I'll share is a little bit more actual. If you're listening to a Catholic podcast and they were like, I felt close to the Lord. This is the story you're probably expecting.
This is the one that you need to listen to.
And then the final one we'll close the show with is the one that I felt really close to the Lord that pissed me off. So that's how we're ending this show. Okay. So this one, when I was in Ohio a few weeks ago, I think I might have mentioned it, but I didn't talk about it. For the first time ever in my life, I visited a monastery. Kathryn, have you ever been to a monastery before?
I have. We were in Abiquiu in New Mexico with our kids.
Albuquerque?
Abiquiu.
Albuquerque?
Albuquerque? No. Abiquiu. Yeah,
I'm going to Albuquerque next week.
It is in the middle of nowhere. It's 12 miles on a dirt road, but it takes you an hour to get into the monastery. So you have to really want to get there and then an hour to leave. So Yeah, we yelled at our kids on the way in and out, but when we were at the monastery, everyone was well behaved.
Sounds
So
holy. It sounds very holy.
it was easily one of the quietest places that I've ever been, and intentionally quiet. It definitely felt like we were in a holy space. I'll say that.
Yeah.
It was my first time ever to go to a monastery.
When was that?
2019.
Okay. So not too long ago. So
Not too far.
So I went, so this Catholic Family Land place that I've gone to speak, I went there twice last summer. I went there once a few weeks ago, and I'm going back in a few weeks. I go there, speak, blah, blah, blah. One of the priests that I met there last year, he was newly ordained a priest, but he's been a monk for a long time. So they become religious first and then become a priest. So he was a newly ordained priest, just like a few months when I met him last summer. So he's a young guy, like easy to talk to because we're same generation. Okay, fine, great, cool. We talked for quite a bit. And then we kept in touch through text messaging, which is crazy. Like that I'm texting a monk is wild to me. Like, I didn't know they could do that, first of all.
But you're going to need a text before 4 p.m. and around 3 a.m., right? Like, that's their day.
Exactly. Yeah. That, and there's the time zone with it being Eastern time. It gets complicated.
And when are they?
Right?
And when are they quiet? When can they have cell phones? Yeah.
Anyway, it's just been a kind of a cool experience to he's the first monk I got to know last summer. I didn't know they were allowed out. He was allowed out. And,
they're like zoo animals. Sometimes they let them.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes they let them leave.
And I actually got more clarity about why he's the first monk that I've ever met out in public. And there's a reason for it. And I actually think it's pretty cool. I'll share that later. But anyway, as we were texting, leading up to me going to visit Catholic Family Land, he said, I want to take you out to the monastery. Like, would you want to come out to our monastery? It's about an hour away from the camp. And I was like, I would love to. I don't have a car. He said, I'll take you. Like, I'm going to be out at camp and I'll take you over there one day and then I'll drive you back and you'll be back, before your talk. I'm like, great. I would love to. Right.
You're like a monk with a car and a cell phone.
Yeah.
Mind blown, right?
What is this? Is he real?
Are you real?
Yeah, exactly. So we drive out there, and he had told me a little bit about his order last year. But one, I didn't ask him a ton about the order, and two, it was a year ago, so I don't remember everything, right? So we talk a lot about the order, and now it's been 3 weeks, so I don't remember everything again. But I'm very technical. This is very technical about what his order is. He's from the order of something angels. That's the name of the order.
Wonderful.
Got it?
Got it.
And the name that he told me is different than the name on the website and different than the name of the monastery. It's all, there's a reason I'm confused. So we're just going to call them the something angels. Okay. So on the way out there, he's telling me a little bit about the story of where we're going. And he's also telling me a little bit about their order. Because there's the somethings of the angels, we talk about angels, which is something that, that's a topic that I just don't talk about a lot, right? Thomas Aquinas seemed to have said a lot of things that were cool, but also in boring books. And everybody seems to agree that he had the last word on angels. So no one talks about him because nobody can add anything because he did it back then. So it's just not a topic of conversation. So we're talking about angels, and he's teaching me all about the different types, the seraphim and the cherubim and the archangels and how there's all these rankings and all this kind of stuff. Okay, cool. The part that I liked was the connection between I met a monk out in public who has a cell phone and a car and the angels. Because he said, what is the angel's job? Because a lot of people think that the angel's only job is just to sing praise and worship songs to God all day. And there are, types of angels. I forget the exact one, but let's just say that seraphim and cherubim, because that sounds right. Their job is to praise God all the time, right? But there are other angels. Like, think about one.
Your guardian angel.
Guardian angels is the second one that he said. And then, people could argue about guardian angels because they're not in the Bible, whatever. Like, we believe in them as Catholics. But the ones that, no Christians can argue about are the archangels. Well, there's one we can argue about because there's one that's only in a Catholic book of the Bible. But the fact that archangels exist, one, and are involved in the lives of human beings cannot be debated because St. Gabriel talked to Mary. He talked to multiple
Right.
people. Saint
And he's
Raphael
in
talked.
scripture. Yeah.
Yeah, Saint Raphael talked in just the Catholic book, and Saint Michael is mentioned throughout, mostly in Revelation, right? So like, and their job is to be, they're in heaven and they're talking to Jesus, and I bet they do sing some praise and worship songs here and there, but they're also like part of their job is to be like these liaisons, right? These are liaisons between heavenly things, and they are heavenly beings, so they are primarily heaven, but they are also the God's liaisons and on earth and working for people on earth. And then the second one is the one that you said, the guardian angels, of like,
Right.
you have one that's very active in your life, and I have one that is semi-active in my life because I only let him be semi-active in my life. But we all have one, even atheists, which is crazy. I never really thought about that. Everybody's assigned one, and I guess they did a bad job with the previous one, so they got the bad assignment. I don't know how that works.
Yeah. Can you imagine like when they're taking a break and they're like, "Hey, who's your guy?"
Right,
yeah, this is the guy I have.
Well, 3 millennia ago, I had,
Right. Always think of
I got
Clarence.
Mother Teresa this time because I had Hitler last time, and it was confusing.
I think about Clarence in It's a Wonderful Life. Have you seen that? Have we talked about this?
I have not. I was
Taylor.
born
Okay, anyway.
A little
Stop.
bit.
It's one of the best movies ever. Okay, we're going to move past that. You're with the
I
mic.
think you
talking
yelled
about
at me
angels.
about this last time.
I did.
We talked.
Yep. I
No,
did.
it wasn't last time we talked. Last time we talked was a week ago. Remember that? 20
Oh,
minutes ago?
so
Yeah.
three times ago. I don't know. But yes, I've yelled at you before, and I'm going to yell at you again. Anyway, moving on. Go ahead.
Nothing new. So I just thought that was fascinating because he said most of the monks there are the more typical monks like you would think about, right? But he's the vocations director. So the whole reason he comes to Catholic Family Land and he stays out there for most of the summer is because he's with these college-age kids, primarily college-age kids, the professional-age kid. There's a college-age group, like a professionals group. It's kind of like Catholic professionals, but for the whole week. It's like older than college, but not quite figured out what they're doing with their life yet. That sort of, vocationally. And then a little bit with the high school kids, that sort of thing. So his job is to share about the order, recruit, pray for vocations, and actively try to get vocations. But he still lives the life of a monk. So he's essentially being like that archangel role of like his primary job is monk and doing priest things. That's his primary job. But he's also going to do some of the active with the people things and like just have conversations with college kids about dating and about whatever they bring up, right? Like I've seen him have conversations about multiple topics just with college kids because college kids are interested, right? So it was cool. It was a cool connection to see. And it's like, that's how I know a monk in person. It's because of that.
I was, as you said that, actually, I think we visited another monastery, the one where Thomas Merton was a priest. That was I think it's in Bardstown, Kentucky.
I figured you had been to a few dead monasteries before. I wasn't sure you had
No,
been to
no,
the
this
active
one.
Was it
No,
still
this
active?
one was active.
Really?
It's active. Yeah, so we were not there when the monks were praying, so we didn't get to see them. But yes, they are there. The one in Albuquerque,
Albuquerque.
we only saw a handful. We only saw a handful in the like in the gift shop area because when we were there was like what I would call quiet time at my house. So everyone was napping. I don't think that they were napping, but they were busy. But there was no talking. I do know that, except in the gift shop. And that's why we had an argument with our kids on the way out.
Yeah, they sold hats and indulgences. It was great. So,
yeah. But they are there. I would highly recommend if you can go to one. It's very cool. It's such a step outside of our busy, chaotic lives. Yeah. And to know that there's people that's their daily life is pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah. The experience of being there. So we get there, we're taking this drive, and I think he's taking me out into the woods to kill me because we are already out in the middle of nowhere, pretty close to Albuquerque or whatever the hell you're saying. And then, we're in the middle of nowhere already at camp. And then he drives me even further away. Like we drive away from the highway, which the camp is on. We drive the opposite direction. And we're literally we're driving like a snake throughout this whole thing. And I'm like, he's going to murder me. He even brought the new recruit to the monastery. Like, that's the guy that's going to hold me down while he stabs me, So sure enough, we get there and it's like legitimately middle of nowhere, right? Like we're in Amish country, like the Amish, like we literally saw actual Amish. I'm not saying it's like, it's the country where Amish live, and we drive in, beautiful lake, immediately serene, right? We drive up this hill. Yeah. There's another lake on the opposite side of the property. Beautiful new church. The church was just dedicated months ago. Like I'm one of the first people to be here. Like it's, I'm in the first 1,000 probably of people who have been to this church. Beautiful. And on the left side, I didn't know this, but there's nuns that live there. So they have a building on the left side of the property. That's where the nuns live, and that's, they have their offices and where they sleep, and they have a chapel over there. And then on the right side is better, because it's men and it's the Catholic Church, and it's the better building and the big church and all that kind of stuff, right? So very, very Catholic of them. And then it's just beautiful. There's trees all the way around. And the first thing that I get to do when I walk in there, we get there at 11:57. And what do Catholics typically do at noon? Pray. What do the monks do at noon? They ring the bells to call to prayer at noon. And then they start prayer whenever the bells end at 12:05. So he said, do you want to go up into the bell tower? And I was like, no, I'm not really feeling it. Yeah, of course I want to go into the bell tower, right? So he brings me up to the bell tower. We get there at 11:57, 11:58, something like that, right before they start going off. And he quickly explains to me, first of all, put these earmuffs on, because it's going to be loud. You're going to stay up here. I'm going to go downstairs because we only have one set of earmuffs. But he explained to me pretty quickly, this is this bell, and it's named Saint this, and this bell is named Saint this, and this bell is named Saint this. And they all had prayers in Latin. They had the Our Father on one of the bells. They had the Creed on one of the bells. They had the Angelus on one of the bells, all written in Latin. Beautiful. I mean, like, bells the size of you, Kathryn. Like, they're huge. Not that you're huge, but for a bell.
Thank you. Yeah, I was getting ready to.
For a bell.
They're as tall. They're as tall as I am.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I almost got myself in trouble talking about a monastery there. So, but it's these beautiful, beautiful bells. I'll fix it by saying that, right? Beautiful 50-year-old bells. Okay, I'm done. So they had these prayers on them, which was a cool thing because, like, I always thought it was just bells, right? It's just, what are the bells doing? It's calling people to prayer. It's telling people what hour it is, but because before we all had clocks in our pockets and watches on our, like, that's how people, like, lived. They were like, oh, the church bells are ringing, it's time for lunch. So the church bells are ringing, it's almost the end of the workday, right?
Right.
But it's not just that. They're, like, literally making the place holy, because every time those bells ring, it's essentially those prayers were, the bells were blessed, and those prayers were prayed over those bells. And it's essentially this idea of these prayers ringing out, the prayers of these monks and these nuns ringing out over their area, ringing out over Central Ohio, ringing out over the world. And I just thought that was a beautiful connection. And then I got to stand up there and listen to those bells go off for 3 minutes. And it's one of the coolest moments of my life. And I was like, this is the coolest parts of Catholicism, man. We got to go visit bell towers at monasteries more often. This is awesome.
That's very cool. Well, monasteries, like places that are holy, do make us step outside of ourselves for a moment and reunite with heaven. It's pretty great.
Yeah. It's beautiful. And then we went downstairs into the church. We prayed Liturgy of the Hours, which, if you're familiar with it, it's a call and response kind of thing, one size. But the one thing, like, dude, I literally felt like I was back in the 1700s. Like, they were singing, almost all the prayers were in Latin. They have them mostly memorized in Latin, right?
They all have a stall, basically, that they sit in with all their stuff in it.
It was just like a quote unquote normal church. Like, so we were in, everybody's in their own pew. But the thing that was, like, old school about it is, like, let's say, I'm sitting in there, and then, like, my priest friend would start intoning the prayer, right? And he'd be like, Lord, come to my assistance. And then the rest of the prayer, all these monks have decided at some point what note they are singing. And it's all different notes. There's 9 of them in this room, and they're all singing this 9-part harmony the whole time. I felt like I was in a movie. I'm like, this is the coolest Catholic thing I've ever been a part of in my life. And they do this every few hours, and nobody gets to experience this. What are we doing? We got to be promoting these guys.
That's awesome.
It was beautiful.
Yeah. It's like when you go to Vespers with the Dominicans. We've been to Vespers
I
here.
haven't done that.
Just right up the road. Yeah, so anytime on Sunday nights, they do it at 5:00, and you can go up and you can pray Vespers with the sisters. And I swear it is like sitting in heaven with a whole bunch of angels. I was like, this is what heaven must sound like. It's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. And then the biggest miracle of all, that's where I felt close to the Lord, but the biggest miracle of all is we ended prayer. We went to go have lunch, and that was going to be the end of our time at the monastery. And they served me lunch, and I'm me, so I'm not going to be a picky eater. But 2, I'm a guest, and this is one of the best spiritual experiences of my life. I'm not going to complain. But I look at this food, and I'm not quite sure what it is. And it was
soup.
Well, it wasn't. It was something fried, but it wasn't a meat that I'd ever seen before. And then I ate it, and at the end of eating the meal, and I finished the meal, and I enjoyed it. I looked at him. I said, "I gotta ask, what was that? what did we just experience together?"
I don't think you want to know.
They were fried mushrooms cooked by the nuns. I've made fun of Liv Harrison for years for her supplement of stupid vegetables for meat. It was incredible. The nuns can do anything. The nuns can do anything. They're just incredible. I enjoyed eating fried mushrooms in the style of like a fried chicken. It was great.
I'm impressed that they didn't serve you soup.
I don't know why you're so hung up on this soup idea.
No, that's what they always eat at the monastery. It's like super light meals. It's like not anything too heavy.
Like, we can't we can't do soup. We got to make him eat a fried vegetable.
We got to give him a mushroom. Okay,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
love it.
So I could be like that guy in my Uber. Okay. Anyway, 2 more quick stories, and then we're done. Okay. The third story is how stupid Christians are. This is a 30-second story. You ready for this?
This will be quick.
Yeah. Because this one's not surprising at all. I've been reading, one of the books that I've been reading on Audible is about the story of the rise and the fall of ESPN. Not that it's fallen, but there's still the super expensive, whatever. Primarily the rise of ESPN and how they literally started from nothing. I'm still at the beginning of the book, and at the beginning of the book, this is not a faith book at all. And it's a pretty worldly book. Yeah, pretty worldly book, right? But there's a faith element, like within the first hour of the audiobook, right? So I am reading about it, and essentially it's these 2 guys that get a hold of satellite technology where it's revolutionary, right? Where essentially everybody before, you would produce content, like they started in Connecticut. You would produce content about Connecticut sports, which there isn't a ton, right? Maybe some UConn stuff, some local pro teams, and then you would create the content there. You would beam it you put it in cables, and it would go to Connecticut. That was it, right? And then these guys made satellites, and they're like, wait. So they would go to cable people, and they'd be like, okay, we would like to create this content. Where would you like it to go? It can go to Connecticut. It can go to LA. It can go to New York. It can go to Italy. It can go to London. Where would you like this content to go? And people are flabbergasted by this. They don't believe that it's real. That's how satellite technology, people didn't pay for it. It was cheaper to go on satellite than the rates currently to go on cable locally. They could have beamed it to all those locations 24/7 for the same price that they could do it for 5 hours locally. Crazy. So nobody would take them up for it. The first thing, Kathryn, our entire lives, you and I's lives and everybody's listening lives are run by satellites now. We just don't like to think about it, but they are. Everything we do, satellite based.
Yeah.
The first thing ever sent to satellite. First thing ever. It wasn't these big cable companies. It wasn't a sports team. It was a local church. And they said, I was so proud of this church. I'm listening to the story, and they were like, we recorded our service. We recorded, there's songs, there's a sermon. Here it is. There's prayers. How much would it cost? And they said it'd be $1,200, and we can beam it. And they said, where would you like it to go? Would you like to go to New York, Connecticut? They said, what do you mean, where would you like it to go? They were like, well, I don't think you fully understand. Like, we can send this to anywhere that has a receiver, and it's all these big places. They're like, no. We want to send it to God. The first people to use a satellite thought this was sending their message to God, and they paid $1,200 in order to take their prayers, send them up to the satellite so that the satellite could then beam them to God, who is further away than the satellite. And I would just like to share this now. If you've been praying and it hasn't been working, I would like you to send me $1,200, and I will send your prayer into the satellites that run this podcast. And the Lord will hear that prayer. It will be close to, your prayer request will be as close to God as that man in my Uber. If you want to send me $1,200, I will do for you what those first satellite producers did. It's the dumbest story I've ever heard, and it makes me laugh incredibly.
Or you could have just said it and, hey, here's the spoiler alert. God already heard it.
Yeah.
You don't need to pay $1,200.
You don't have to pay. That's the thing.
It's free.
He heard it already. He heard it when you recorded it, dumbass.
He heard it before you even thought about recording it.
Yeah. And you paid $1,200.
He knew.
Kathryn, I was so proud of them. I'm like, are you serious? The Christians were at the cutting edge of satellite cable. They're at the cutting edge of this? No! They're idiots. So dumb. Okay. Last story. This is how God messes with me. You ready for this? Okay.
Yeah.
Over the course of the last month, I was getting over being sick. You were recently sick as well. You bounced back a lot faster than I did. We were supposed to record this 2 days ago.
I had meds. I had antibiotics.
I did too, and it didn't work. We were recording only 2 days later than I thought. Incredible. You bounced back. You're a survivor. You're a fighter. Okay, great. I had some weird viral disease, so they couldn't give me much medicine, but they gave me steroids. So I got steroid pack. Great. I felt better for the 5 days on the steroids. Then the steroids ended. And that viral infection lingered for about another week and a half. So about 2 weeks of this viral thing. And then because my immune system was bad, I got a sinus infection, which is normal for me because I have allergies.
Wonderful.
So for 4 weeks in a row, I had a sickness, and they were actually pretty similar symptoms, right? One of those symptoms being that like my ears were clogged. Like it always makes me angry when I can't do anything about it. Like if it's in my nose, I can use a neti pot, I can blow it out, but nothing helped. It's all in my ears and it's trapped there, right? I can't do anything. So like I edit audio, I speak, I'm writing on planes, and I have this incredible pressure in my ears. Just miserable for a month, Kathryn. Miserable for a month. And then one of the things I've learned over the last few weeks, and like one of the big breakthroughs Father Anthony had, is like the whole ordeal of me feeling bad for me praying or asking other people to pray for my house to sell whenever, there's people dying every day. What's my stupid request, right? But Father Anthony has taught me all these things. I was on the podcast a few weeks ago. Go listen to it, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, I'm finally doing it. I'm sitting in Mass, and I'm like, God, I really want you to heal me. It was the Mass about the Jairus' daughter being healed and the hemorrhaging woman being healed. And I was like, God, I want you to heal me. I've been sick for a month. I'd like for you to heal me. I'd also like for you to sell the house, or help us sell the house. And I'd also like you to heal me, with these, essentially
is this the first time that you were asking God?
It wasn't the first, because I'm obedient and I did it the first time that Father Anthony told me to, but it is only like the second or third. It's like this big thing, right? Oh my God, I want you to heal me for this. I want you to help us sell the house. And then, like, immediately after I prayed that prayer, and it's at the end of Mass, like it took me all of Mass to even get to this point. At the end of Mass, we do the communion hymn, and then the second communion hymn. I had one of the craziest moments of like, I've never had anything like this happen before, where it's the song, open my eyes, Lord, help me to see your face. Like this beautiful song, right? Kathryn, I sound like one of those preachers asking for $1,200 randomly, right? I'm not joking. My ear's been clogged for a month. Open my ears, Lord, help me to hear your voice. My right ear popped for the first time in a month. It worked. I asked for it and it happened. I'm not lying. I'm not making this story up. I wish I was, because then it would make a bunch of other unanswered prayers make more sense. But like, it was crazy. It's like the most directly answered prayer of like, hey, God, can I have $1 million? And then it just starts falling from my ceiling. Like that's essentially this experience I had. Will you help me heal me from this thing and help me sell my house? So open my ears, Lord, help me to hear your voice. Pop. My right ear popped. Everything's cleared, and it's been fine ever since. I knew at the moment that it was going to be bad 3 minutes later, and it wasn't. So there was even that untrust in me that I still had to work through after. But like my ear opened up, right? And now, that was Sunday. This is what day is it? Wednesday? No movement on the house. So that was the bigger prayer request. That was the bigger prayer request. That's the thing I actually wanted. And he's like, Taylor, I love you. I'm going to heal your ear because you asked for that. But you know what I'm not going to do? The thing you actually want. So I had this beautiful moment with God where he miraculously healed my ear. I believe that 100%. Nothing on the house. Kathryn, what do you think about this scenario that I just laid in front of you?
Not that you know of, but maybe he's moving some things around so that someone else can make like the right person. You don't want just anyone to make an offer on your house. You want the person who's going to buy your house. I want just anyone
to make an offer on my house. Don't you put that on me, Ricky Bobby.
Well, I think that we have our timeline and God has his. And so
my timeline ended a while ago.
Maybe he was giving you some immediate relief so that you could love your family better. Then the house will come.
Oh, wow. If I have to love my family better before I sell the house, we're going to be here a while.
I think that oftentimes I wonder about his timeline. I got to be honest.
Yeah.
Or when it feels really hard, I'm like, I feel like I'm learning the lesson. Jesus, can we just move this along? It's really hard when you want something badly to be patient. Mm-hmm. But welcome to the life of a Christian.
Yeah. I honestly,
not to be the downer, but
it's one of the cooler moments I've had. Like, nothing can take away from it. Like, seriously, I asked for it during the first communion song, and then the next communion song is "Open My Ears, Lord," and my ear pops during that voice. Come on!
We all have a friend, like, when we'll be like lamenting about something that we're struggling with, and they're like, "Have you prayed about it?" And I'm like, "Well, kinda." And they're like, "Hey, Kathryn, why don't you pray about it?" And I'm like, "Fine." And usually when I do that, it changes my disposition. So maybe what you just needed to hear was the nudge from God to be like, "Hey, have you prayed about that?"
Are you continuing? That's the problem.
And here's what I'm doing. Are you continuing to pray about it? Not. Are you demanding it from God?
No,
Taylor?
no.
Are you
no. You think about the lesson I learned from this. What is the lesson I'm taking away from this? The lesson I'm taking away from this is I'm not praying about another single thing. Because if I pray about anything else, if I pray about being a better husband and father, that'll happen. And my ear will pop while it's going. But if I pray about two things, he's going to answer the one I don't really want.
Yeah, because our God is a transactional God. That's the way things work.
Absolutely. He's just like that Schlossnagel guy.
Not even. By the way, I was going to tell you.
God is a transactional God. He reigns.
I was going to share with you what the core values are for A&M. You said I could list those off in a hurry. I know, but I was going to tell them to you because I think that they're worth listening to. So respect, excellence, and then leadership, loyalty, integrity, and selfless service.
I got so
always RELIS is the abbreviation. I mean, I often think,
no way. I had no idea. There's a RELIS campus and it's named after the core values. That's cool. Good job, guys.
You're welcome. I think that every time I think about my relationship with Christ, like especially when it comes to prayer, how selfish am I being when I ask for the request? Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Like
100%.
is this for me or is this for the glory of the kingdom?
Yeah. And
I'm not going to answer. That's a rhetorical question. I'm not going to answer that.
That's what I talked about with Father Anthony. Is like he's like, no, ask for the ones for you, and I'm like, okay. And then my ear pops, but my house is still on the market.
Just separate them out, Taylor. Just pray for one thing at a time.
No, nothing till it's like a blowout sale.
It's this
all my prayers are
is
gone.
This deal or no deal?
Deal or no deal. Sell the house, or I'm not talking to you.
Deal or no deal.
Right.
Yeah, that's what that
speaking of deal or no deal, you made a deal for one episode. We just did two. I made a deal to take my son to strength and conditioning camp a week ago, right now. So I gotta go, and you have to go. And thank you for doing this emergency 2 episodes. I appreciate that, Kathryn.
Anytime.
Oh, no, don't say that. Don't say that because then you'll be on every week. All right. I'm Taylor Schroll. I'll be back next week. Kathryn will be back probably in 2 months because she's probably tired of me. Anyway, you'll see her when you see her. Bye. Love you. Thank you for watching and listening to today's episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you share this with somebody. Maybe share it with somebody that you've had an Uber experience with. Maybe share it with somebody who has had a weird experience in a Catholic Mass, which should be every Catholic and maybe some guests. Share it with somebody who gets mad at God when they do exactly what they ask. Share it with whoever you think will enjoy this episode, and we will see you again very soon. Love you.